This is the most exciting thing the last 5 years, to be honest. I think starting in 2012, where you see further investments going on. And speaking realistically, the first stage of the investments from the private household, it was just cash into brick and mortar. This was the first wave. So there was no cheap money activity. There was risk adjustment investments, euro discussions, breakup, and all these things going on. It changed meanwhile, starting in 2014. Just looking on the figures on that. So a lot of money going into these micro apartment living and all these new segments, we call it. So before there was no micro apartment or smaller things. There was a family, 4 members, 82 square meters on average. So I wouldn't say these things don't vanish, but you can see a massive impact, especially on these agglomeration areas. It's Frankfurt, it's Munich, and the prices get higher. Reaction on that, I think you know that was the rental break discussion, decision last year by the government, without any measurable effect, speaking frankly and open on that. So we expect much more money going into the resi things. In the case of Frankfurt, you mentioned the case, not the Brexit, but we have the opening of the ECB 2 years ago. And you see massively increase, positively speaking, in the former East End of Frankfurt, where you wouldn't live, to be honest. And now the prices are higher from people who has another wage level, the ECB bankers on that, in a spot where you lived before. And this is interesting kind of a blueprint. The local Frankfurt guys expected when all the people from the city come to Frankfurt. I don't believe this correlation, to be honest, but next thing is that we should also face more on the energetic requirement of the whole resi stock in Germany, because whether it's the green ones or the black ones or the red ones, every second year we have a so-called energy reduction, I call it in German an Energieeinsparverordnung, every second year. And this will, just on a book level, decrease the value or devaluate your property if you don't refurbish it. It's just a general artificial explanation, but the energetic requirement exploded the last 10 years, and there is no end with that. So when you look for existing resi stock in these days, and especially in the B locations and all these things, you see most of the portfolios are at the age of the 70s and 80s, and you have to do something huge with that portfolio. And this is again where I see more money coming, especially to the resi sector, and the resi sector in Germany is of course B, C, and A, B, and C locations.
I think in Germany, the product student housing is not as defined as in the UK yet, or probably it will never be. So I think we have micro living, we call it. So probably young professionals under the age of 30 who have to move around, who have to study and work in different places. So I would call the topic the asset class micro living, of which student housing is a part, young living, sort of drivers, as mentioned by Thomas just now. The product itself, micro living, student housing, didn't exist till now in Germany. So the product needs to be understood. It needs to be seen how it's placed in the market. Also, students or young people have to first, realize what the product is. It's furnished. It has internet, etc. So it's basically micro housing, and it's quite a new product in Germany.
We call it the millennial generation, the 18 to 35-year-olds, the creative class, and it's not just in residential. You have to see how this generation is impacting the tenant base. And that's a topic possibly for a wider seminar than today, that there is a substantial change in the tenant base and also in the corporates who employ those tenants. And I think Microsoft with Linden, when they bought the object there, they bought the object not necessarily because it's in an application and it's a historical one. They bought it because of networking and the interflow. There is a sea change happening in the fundamental tenant sector, in the professional sector from a young. So when we talk about big picture, please don't forget that fundamentally we're driven by tenants. And I think everybody in this room needs to sit down and actually look at the demographic changes and what's happening, and whether we're in Frankfurt, in Ostbahnhof, or whether we are in Magdeburg, it doesn't matter. Look at the tenants. So that's the first thing I would say from that, but lifting from Richard's comment, healthcare, demography, 84 million people in Germany. You're going to have aging population. We're having over 10 million people, over 65 million in the next 10 years. the Pflegeheim nursing home sector, assisted living sector, and medical office building sector is a key fundamental sector. It was seen as a fringe. You saw Deutsche just bought the Berlin Novo portfolio. AXA are in the market with their portfolio. There is significant development in the sector, both from acquiring existing, refurbishing, because as just hearing some of these Pflegeheims are fairly historic. But if you get over the regulatory hurdle, which is more the mental hurdle than the real hurdle, there is significant growth, especially when you follow demography. In my previous house, nursing homes, assisted living, which is a growing subsector in residential, but a significant one, but also then medical office buildings. So I think you need to look at the sectors which fundamentally are underpinned by demographic change. And you have to see it across our industry. And it's not just in these alternative sectors, because they're not alternative anymore. But it's in our core sectors. Even if you look at logistics, if you look at retail, see what the fundamental tenant base are doing. And that's one of the things which, with all due respect to presentations, we forget fundamentals, and it's people. And all I would ask of you is to follow what I'm hearing from Felix, definitely in residential, what I'm seeing from Michael in the sectors. Follow the people, follow the demography, and you realize that you have a far better fundamental investment strategy than just applying capital to a strategic allocation.